Okay, so let's look at culture in a quick synopsis. So looking at the pictures on this next slide, so culture is things that represent you and what you do as a family or by yourself in your free time. So do you like plants? Do you garden? Do you have baskets in your home? Even things like clocks. Do you hang clocks on your wall as part of your culture? Do you listen to music? Do you have rugs in your home? Things like that. That is all part of culture. What do you do? What do you have? What surrounds you? Um, so a little bit more. So a culture artifact is something that speaks to you, describes you, or represents you. So what can you bring into a classroom that does that for a child? What helps them connect and relax because that classroom is representing them and speaking to them and describing them. So think of how they might celebrate meals or customs. So what kinds of things might they find when they are eating? Do they put candles on the table? What kind of silverware or utensils or plates, cups, things like that do they use? Do they use placemats? Do people eat together? Do they eat separately? Sleeping, how do they sleep? Do children go to bed when they want to? Or do they have strict bedtimes? When they go to bed, do they go to bed with a stuffed animal? Or do they self-comfort? Hobbies and pastimes. Do they go to the mountains, to the beach? Do they fly kites, listen to music, watch movies? So what do they do together? Craft, any of those kinds of things. Pets. Do they have pets? Do they not have pets? And what are their beliefs about pets? Are pets allowed in the home? And then how do they live? Basic things like that can be cultural artifacts. So what do they put in their home? How do they decorate? So it's not really an heirloom, but it could be something that follows them through their life, however. So if you take me, for instance, growing up, gardening and yard work was a huge part of our culture. It's not something I always enjoyed, but it was something we did together as a family. As soon as I was old enough to move out on my own and get my own home, yard work is not part of my culture. I will have anybody I can find do my yard work. I will pay them. It is not something that's definitely not part of my culture. So things like that. Look at what's part of your culture and what's part of the children's culture and what you can include in your classroom. So teachers don't make a ton of money, so how are you going to include that within the classroom? So Goodwills, thrift stores, and garage sales are all great ideas to get it for a little bit less. Family donations can be wonderful. If you get family donations and they want them back at the end of the school year or in a few months, make sure that they do know that they are going into a childcare or a classroom with children, and so there is a risk of them being broken or get paint on them or that kind of thing, and so they may not come back to them in pristine condition, and they need to understand that. But we do want and do appreciate them being in the classroom because that helps represent their family culture. You can always buy them and then think of other ways. I've had students in the past think of fantastic ways that you could come up with different ways to bring in children's culture. So how might you do that? Okay, so looking ahead to your assignment, you're given, I think, 4 scenarios. Look at those scenarios. What are ways that you can bring in that child's culture? I'm not asking you to write me a book about each of those scenarios. I'm asking you to really look at how you can look at that child and say, this is how I would support that child's culture within my classroom. What would you bring into that classroom to help that child feel represented, comforted, appreciated, and like they belong in that classroom because their culture is represented? If you have any questions, I am here. Please reach out and let me know if you have any questions.